It's great to be here this morning, and just to say that from the outset, this is a project where we're joined at the hip because we have to be, because it's really important. What I'm going to do this morning is touch on four things, just maybe to give you a bit of background as to where Tourism Ireland have fit into the picture on Brexit. Secondly, just to look at market performance. Thirdly, to look at some of the drivers that are impacting on that. And then to take a quick helicopter tour of some of the markets themselves, just to give you a sense of what's going on. It's impossible to cover it all, by the way, but just some key highlights, but some key learnings as well before we wrap up. So look, where do we start? Last year, the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union. We established a group over in Britain when it happened. We spent a lot of time on the ground to sense what the mood music was like. We work obviously closely with the colleagues in Fáilte Ireland. We also work very closely with our colleagues in the Department of Tourism, Transport and Sport, and feed in key strategic factors and work closely with John Callanan, who's the Second Secretary in the Department of the Taoiseach, who is in charge of the Brexit unit. We get reports back from them every week, so we're well tied in to the Irish government in relation to what the key issues are. Where things stand as of now is that the European Union and the United Kingdom have agreed the basis for negotiations, and those negotiations have already started. You read about it in the newspapers. There's clear agreement on what the three key issues are. One is respective migrant rights, both in the UK and the EU, into the future. The second one is what the bill will be post the UK leaving the European Union. And the third one is Northern Ireland. And an agreement has been reached that until substantive progress is made in those three issues, there can't be any discussion on what the future relationship is going to be. Now, you've seen Prime Minister May has made a statement just last week that they're looking to actually extend the transitional period by 2 years, and that's going to play out in the next number of months. But as things stand right now, the United Kingdom is due to leave the European Union on the 31st of March 2019. And that's got major implications in relation to the way we do our business. What we've fed in from Word Go into the Taoiseach's office is that there are some key strategic issues that have an impact on our industry moving forward. Now, not in order of priority, just coming out of my head, so to speak, they are the future of the common travel area, the future of the border, and these things are in the priority one issues for negotiations as things move on. But even if all those things were resolved, what's the future, for example, of visa relationships? For example, in markets like China and India, where we've got the new UK-Ireland visa scheme, which allows basically free movement of people between the UK and Ireland for tourists coming. What about the future of the UK short-stay visa waiver programme, which operates in 15 countries in Asia, which allows people to enter the UK, clear immigration, and come to Ireland with no additional visa requirement? More importantly, what's the future of the UK-EU Open Skies Agreement, which will allow, effectively define the future relationship of flights throughout the UK and Europe? And there's huge, important strategic issues. So they're there and they're on the agenda, and we have flagged those to the system. And just to assure you that those have been taken really seriously by the centre. So that's sort of where the negotiations are. And as Paul mentioned, there's another event over in Royal Hospital, Kilmainham. It's the Taoiseach's Global All-Ireland Forum. I'll be speaking at that this morning, along with my colleagues from the IDA, Enterprise Ireland and Bord Bia. So there's very much a good joined-up sense in relation to what's going on. So one thing has happened, though. We've got a sterling issue. That's happening, arising from the issues that have happened over the last year. And what I'm just going to, my second point really is to talk about market performance. And this is a very busy slide. There's lots of numbers on it. So I'll just talk you through the key thing, though. These are the tourism results for the first 7 months for visitor numbers and the first 6 months for revenue. They're the latest available. And what they tell is a certain picture. It tells us that in the first 6 months of 2017, overseas visitors spent €2 billion here in Ireland. The biggest market is the bottom one here, mainland Europe. The spend there was just short of €750 million. Go over to the left-hand side, North America, 621 million. Go to the top, Great Britain, 455 million. I go over to the right, Australia, developing markets like India and China, 242 million. Now, we started on the path to market diversification some years ago, focusing more on markets that stayed longer and spent more, not to the detriment of Great Britain. And mainland Europe actually has been the biggest spender into Ireland for a number of years. And what we did predict a number of years ago was that North America would go into number 2 place by 2019. What has happened is that within the first half of 2017, the North Americans now have leapfrogged ahead of the British in terms of tourism spend. It's not denying the importance of the British markets. They're hugely important from a regional and seasonal perspective, but now North Americans are spending considerably more in the first half than British people. Another interesting statistic, the 450 million or so from Great Britain has been fast caught up by Australia and developing markets, who spent 242 million. Imagine that, people from long-haul markets spending half what our British visitors have spent. The revenue from Britain is only down 3% in the first 6 months, by the way, so there isn't any major changes happening there. But it is a trend, and the trend is accelerating faster than we thought. There are a couple of factors just to mention. Air access plays a key role in it as well. We've seen a 7% increase in the number of air capacity into Ireland in the first 6 months during the summer period, I should say. It runs from March to October into Ireland. North America up a staggering 22% with the likes of Norwegian and expansion by Aer Lingus and others. And Australia and developing markets, 14% more seats. This is a trend that on current form is likely to continue. We don't have the final numbers yet available for the winter air access inventory, but what I can say to you is that for the likes of mainland Europe, already confirmed, leaving aside what's going on in Ryanair at the moment, there are new routes confirmed from Germany that will deliver 4,000 seats a week over the winter period. KLM from Amsterdam into Dublin will have an extra 2,500 seats a week. Lufthansa from Frankfurt alone, an additional 1,200 seats a week. And also, just take Aer Lingus, who are expanding quite a bit. Just the two routes of Bordeaux and Bilbao, which are new, will be 1,200 seats a week as well. That's 4,000 seats into Europe this winter, and they're most likely to continue into next summer. North America, we have all the benefit of the Norwegian air access, which will continue into the winter period. Aer Lingus have just opened Miami, have expanded in LA, and are likely to announce additional capacity into next summer. And on Australian developing markets, Etihad Airlines are now going all year round, double dailies. So there's 4 flights a week between Etihad and Emirates, and now Qatar have also launched as well. And we have Hong Kong Airlines launched next summer, and fingers crossed on another long-haul Chinese flight from December. What that all means is that this winter, in other words, between October and next March, it's quite likely that the air access picture from mainland Europe will increase by somewhere between 5 and 10%. We'll have those figures confirmed in the next few weeks. It's likely that North American air access will increase by 10%, perhaps a little bit more, and Australian developing markets will certainly go up by maybe 10%, but off a smaller base. Great Britain is slightly at risk. We don't have confirmed numbers yet, but we're highly unlikely to see any increase, perhaps a small decrease. So that issue about market diversification is really important, and it's a trend that we're going to see continue into this winter. And next summer, by the way, we're likely to see more air access from mainland Europe and North America. Too early to call in relation to Britain at the moment. That was 554,000 seats every week in the summer of 2017. Go back to the bad old days in 2011, that was actually 424,000. So that's 130,000 extra seats every single week coming into Ireland. This winter, about 435,000, about 4.5%, but that's not absolutely confirmed yet, but roughly. So look, fourthly, I should say, I'm going to take a whiz around the markets really just to talk about some of the key issues. It's impossible to go through every single point, but just looking at Great Britain, first of all, as Paul already said, this is our most important market from a volume perspective. It's really important from a regional perspective, really important from a seasonal perspective. Last year we welcomed 4.9 million British visitors, accounting for 49% of our total volume business. They spent €1.5 billion in revenue, about 28% of our total revenue. 40% of the business comes between October and March. As I said, really important for regional travel. And the air access is actually still very good. It's about 230,000 seats every single week coming in from Britain. And don't forget, the ferries are really important as well. About 22% of people who come to Ireland from GB come by ferries. And Irish Ferries investing 140 million on a new craft next year, and Stena putting in 4 new craft in between now and 2020. So that's a really important factor as well. And those ferries, very important for regional distribution and length of stay. We have worked with Red Sea in Great Britain. We went out last summer and also last January, and we carried out 2 polls amongst British consumers to identify how they were feeling with regard to their holidays and what they saw the future like. What they said to us was that Brexit meant that most of them wouldn't change their travel plans. About 7 of them felt that it would, and Ireland likely to be more affected by other destinations. So a lot of that has come to pass. The one thing that has surprised us, mind you, is we expected to see a decline of about 2.5% in the number of British people travelling abroad this year. Well, the British have actually confounded us. The British have travelled abroad in bigger numbers. So I think it's something we have to be very careful of. Despite the economic climate, the holiday is seen as a necessity, not a luxury. What we've seen is more British people travel to long-haul markets where currency isn't as big an issue. We've seen less of them travel to North America, where it is a very big issue for them, and we've actually seen British numbers travel to Europe increase by 2%, mainly into sun holiday destinations. The British piled into Spain in huge numbers. Now, it's my theory, I can't prove it yet, that what's probably happening is that the British are still saying that, yes, I am taking my holiday. I want value for money, I want to get my bit of sun, and I want my 2 weeks fix. But the short breaks are something that may go by the wayside if inflation continues to go up by 2.5 or 2.9% as it currently is. Now, we have a third series of Red Sea research in the marketplace at the moment, and that will be unveiled at a meeting next week, which Paul Kelly will attend before our Flavours of Ireland event in London on the 4th of October. Paul has already mentioned the issue of sterling. Just looking at the figures yesterday, I think it's approximately a 10% depreciation. Sterling has actually come back in the last week or so, but compared to this date last year. But the average daily rate of a hotel room in Dublin is up 10% as well over the same period. So for British people coming right now, it's 20% more expensive than it was a year ago. I'm sorry, you will not be able to hold your market share if that's the case. We've seen this in the past. Inflation in Britain is almost at 3%. Wages are not catching up. There's a big row going on public sector pay at the moment because that's more or less frozen. So unless we're delivering the same value for money as we were before, we will not be able to hold our share in Britain. We are focusing more spend on the culturally curious. These are people who tend to like the finer things in life, tend to probably more read the Telegraph than consume their media through social means, but they're likely to stay longer and spend more. And this is something that's going to be a greater focus, certainly as we move forward into the period in 2018. So just some of the things that are going on at the moment. We just launched our major campaign for the autumn period, working with the likes of Aled Jones, who's a major player in ITV, working on Classic and Smooth FM. That'll reach 7.5 million people this autumn alone. And we're delighted that Codaline has signed up to work with us as well. Codaline's campaign will reach 10 million during this autumn. So we expect that to do a lot of good for us as well. Working on the regional issue, working very closely with the carriers. We work with about 30 carriers every year doing joint campaigns. Ryanair, Aer Lingus, just some examples here with TripAdvisor as well. Really pushing that strong price message and pushing a really strong regional message as well. There's very good provincial access from Great Britain into the regions of Ireland, and it's very important that we keep those planes as full as we possibly can. There's a very big Dublin campaign you'll be learning more about later on that'll be breaking with partners. Great collaboration between Fáilte Ireland and the 4 regional authorities. We'll see very strong work with some of the partners that we see up there at the moment. Really it's about sell, 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 and to make sure that during the off-peak that we're driving as much business as possible. Just waiting for the click here, folks. Okay, so publicity is still very important, despite all the advent of social media and the great platforms that we have around the world. Some key publications here, but many, many others as well. We have key partnerships with the likes of the Telegraph, some great stuff there from National Geographic. Donegal, by the way, has been winning everything this year, but also pushing strong regional messages as well, where possible, and a very strong focus working with the colleagues in Fáilte Ireland on festivals as well. I mean, the publicity alone this year in Great Britain is very, very substantial, and we'll put a major focus on that as we head into 2019 as well. Working with the trade, incredibly important. We'll have about 70 companies going over to World Travel Market this year in November. Next year we'll have about 40, next week we'll have about 40 going over to the Flavours of Ireland event, which is very important as well. There were 22 GB coach tour operators in around the northwest and border counties over the last week or so. And there's been quite a number of awards that we've won as best destination as well. So reputation is still important. You can't afford to take it for granted. We have to continue to work hard, convincing these people that Ireland is a great place to go, and there's plenty of things that we have to shout about there as well. In relation to mainland Europe, we invested more in mainland Europe this year, despite not having a bigger budget. We actually focused more money on mainland Europe and North America. These are the bigger spenders. Remember the figure of 750 million and still growing. We're doing a lot of pan-market campaigns this year with carriers. Again, some examples here, particularly focusing again on regions, but it's also about season extension. In a market like Spain, for example, by the way, it's our 5th biggest market now. It's quadrupled in the last 15 years. 40% of the business in Spain comes in the last 3 months. So we have real capacity to grow business in that shoulder season. And the 10 markets we'll work in during the autumn period will have 68 million impressions over the course of the next number of months. Again, working very strongly with the Wild Atlantic Way, working with carriers like Aer Lingus and Ryanair, who carry in over 80% of people who come onto this island. Very, very important. There's a campaign with the Guinness Storehouse, which is out in markets at the moment as well. And again, those markets like Amsterdam, or cities like Amsterdam, Madrid, really strong air access and a lot of capacity at really good value as well in Dublin over the number of months ahead. It's also about trying to get new tours, new itineraries, and to push additional nights as well. I mean, the length of stay is about 7 nights. For mainland Europe, it's about 8 or 9. But to try and get people to add on nights as well brings really good value. This is one of the most popular programs in Italy, which Kilimanjaro is the name of it. That's been into film already. That'll have a reach of 1.2 million. And some of our publicity in Germany will reach 20 million people with some of the publicity this year. And there's also a very big push on with food in Germany, which is going to come in a moment. Yeah, there it is there, working with our colleagues in Borbia and Kerrygold as well. There's 9 videos produced that will reach 20 million people in Germany. I mean, Germany is really still an untapped market. There's about 700,000 people will come from Germany this year, but there's a strong, all the research indicates a very strong affinity with Ireland, and really it's about trying to convert the sale. So in relation to North America, sorry that the text just doesn't quite come up there. We did invest more money in North America this year. And again, to go back to your figures, remember 620 million in the first 6 months of this year, an explosion in air access. To put it in perspective, if you went back to the previous good old days in 2007, there were 35,000 seats every single week from USA and Canada. This summer, there were over 60,000. It's a phenomenal amount. There are 20 gateways now from the United States and Canada. We've seen major announcements over the last number of months from carriers like Norwegian. We're now in places like Cork, Shannon. They're expanded into Belfast, into Dublin. Aer Lingus have opened Miami. Expect another announcement from Aer Lingus in the next number of months. We also have seen further big announcements from the Canadian side of things over the last while with the new Montreal-Dublin route, and we've also got a Toronto-Shannon route over the line for next summer. So a lot of reasons to be cheerful in relation to North America. Long-staying, I should say, high-spending visitors. With that in mind, we went back on national TV. They reached the TV, that should be 225 million, I beg your pardon, in the spring. And our digital campaigns will reach 100 million people this autumn. We have campaigns with a lot of the partners in the marketplace at the moment, all very enthusiastic and eager to collaborate. But some of the fares are absolutely sensational. If you actually just go online and look yourself, there's so much capacity at the moment. There is incredible value for flying into Ireland from the United States. So I expect to hear a lot more of those accents around the place. This is a campaign that we've just launched in the last week. Saks Fifth Avenue in New York and Beverly Hills. 1.5 million top customers will see showcases from the island of Ireland in those windows. And again, it's just something new, it's novel, it's tried to do things a little bit differently. And it's had a great reaction so far. Publicity is still a very important aspect of our business in North America. About 100 million euros in value. And I want to thank the colleagues in Fulch Ireland here on the ground for really providing so much support in bringing in some of these major titles. To put it in perspective, National Geographic, I met their CEO when I was over there this year, from Farnham actually, and he said in all the destinations that searched on their site in 2015, Ireland was the number 1. They have 50 million fans on Facebook, they have 65 million fans on Instagram, and in 2016 we were up in the top 5 destinations. So those are really valuable partnerships to have. That doesn't come about by chance. To have the sort of strong correlation. And so the collaboration that we have on the ground here with the industry, with the colleagues in Foggia is really important, and we have to keep the momentum going on some of those really important channels. Last and by no means least, Australia and developing markets, coming off a lower base, but growing rapidly. We've seen really some good momentum over the last number of years. I've mentioned the air access picture already. I've just come back yesterday from our sales mission out to the UAE. I mean, it's the most connected place into Ireland. There are 5 flights now every single day from that part of the world. 10,000 seats every single week. We didn't have that 6-7 years ago. I met all the carriers, the CEO of Etihad, the CEO of Emirates, and we'll be out in Qatar in November. And they're eager to try and grow business. The Qatar flight, for example, connects us to 149 cities around the globe from Doha. And this is an area that we have to get more active. There's I think, a UAE-friendly group that's going to be set up a bit like our China one with Fulch Ireland in due course. It's not that complicated, actually, but it's simple stuff, Do you know how many halal restaurants there are in Dublin? There are simple things from a customer perspective that you can do that gets these people excited. But they are looking for somewhere new. I was bowled over by the welcome that we got when we were over there over the last number of days. We met about 170 travel agents. We've got the visa regime in place in places like China and India. We expect more visa liberalisation from the Gulf coming into next year. The indirect access is also very strong as well. And we have sales missions that will be going out to places like the UAE, China, India again in 2018. And I would advise people, if they're interested in these markets, to really work with us in a collaborative fashion. We have 13 companies over this week. Again, a lot of promotions overseas, which I've touched on already, and that's a momentum that will keep going forward into the latter part of the year. The biggest one being World Travel Market, but we still have sales missions going out to the west coast of the States in November. That's fully subscribed, and we have a team over at 12 companies over in India at the moment as well. So if you want to participate, there is a website called industryopportunities.com. I'd advise you to look at that. It doesn't always mean having to go out into the marketplace. There are lots of ideas there. I just want to say thank you for giving me the time to speak to you this morning. I just want to sort of give this our 100% endorsement. I think it's a terrific kit. There are a lot of really good tips in here. This is a real challenge for us. I remember being back in tourism in 2007 and 2008 when the graph started to fall first. And it was small. It started to fall at 3%, 4%, 5%. That became 10%, and in 1 month alone, I'll never forget it because I was the newly appointed chief executive. In February 2010, it fell by 31%. We didn't see it coming, and I think we're much better prepared now. But my one message is, work with Fáilte Ireland on the ground here. If we don't get that value for money right, we can't talk about holding market share. The British tourists coming over here are experiencing approximately 20% more expensive destination than they did this time last year, and that won't be sustainable for us. But look, I think we've still got a lot of good things to shout about. I think we're in much better shape, we're much better prepared, the crisis that will come up and creep up on us. And I want to congratulate the team in Fáilte Ireland for the great work they put into this. So thanks very much, and look forward to the rest of the day.